Welcome. This is some more information I've had for a while now, and I think this might be the best way to release it. It has some pretty astounding revelations that not many people know about. And when some of this information came out in 2017 and 2018, it didn't go anywhere. But these are huge revelations regarding very sensitive information on US citizens and the relationship between the US military, US government, and the private military contractors that acquire this analyzed data as part of their wheeling and dealing. And most might think, well, who cares? It's just data. What's the big deal? Well, in other videos on this channel, we've already discussed the dangerous ways that data can be weaponized in cognitive warfare. And we're going to be diving into this a little bit more in this video as well. Cognitive warfare online starts with data. Once you have the data, you can build the AI predictive models. And once you have the predictive models, you can determine how to proceed during influence campaigns to engineer the attitudes and behaviors of populations and specific demographics. And it's through online micro-targeting and specific communications tactics using bots and or semi-autonomous systems that these models can be used as a gauge to alter cognition and the way that entire populations perceive events. And we're going to be getting into that a little bit more at the end. But this article primarily focuses on this private-public partnership of the military-industrial complex and who ends up with this analyzed data at the end of the day. And then we're going to get into the dangerous side of predictive analytics at the end. And somewhere in the middle, we're going to be briefly touching on a self-sustaining domestic war economy that seems to be occurring within the United States right now. And if you're curious about the sources I've cited, the link to my article's in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you find any of this interesting at all. Share the video, tell your friends, and with that, let's get into it. So the article's titled, quote, "Intellectual Property," end quote. What is the government doing with your analyzed data? No American company is more prolific in the area of data analysis than a defense contractor known as Palantir. Palantir is a hybrid software and consulting firm considered a software as a service company, or SaaS. A man named Peter Thiel co-founded Palantir Technologies in May of 2003 and serves as chairman. While technically listed as the, quote, co-founder, end quote, Thiel incorporated Palantir Technologies as the primary custodian on Pensco Trust Company, the official general owner. Palantir wasn't started alone, though, with an early primary investor being the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. Palantir developed some of the earliest AI and data tools for the US government, continually gaining and maintaining open contracts, managing the software and data of the US Army, US Air and Space Force, US Navy and Marines, US Coast Guard, CIA, FBI, NSA, DoD, DOJ, DOS, ICE, HHS, IRS, SEC, and nearly all areas of the government since the company's founding. Palantir was created in the wake of 9/11 to solve the interagency dilemma that while every department must work together in the name of terror, some data can't be laterally shared for analysis and pattern recognition. It was decided that utilizing Palantir's commercial software would solve this. And since those early days of Palantir, it has extended its data analysis tools from strictly being within the US government to working for companies such as NASDAQ, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Bank of England, Deutsche Bank, American Express, Credit Suisse, First Data, now called Fiserv, the independent sales organization of Wells Fargo, PNC Bank, Deutsche Bank, MVB Bank, Standard Charter, Bridgewater Associates, Northrop Grumman, News Corp, Comcast, Coca-Cola, BP, Walmart, and Hershey, to name only a few. Palantir's proprietary analytics software is able to crunch data to produce, quote, predictive insights, end quote, according to not only the sales pitch on its website, but more than 1,000 internal Palantir emails and documents obtained from and verified by 6 current and former employees. Exactly what these predictive insights are used for is an entirely different question altogether. The most dangerous aspects of data analytics will be discussed in the next section. Upon requesting the services of Palantir, storage of the data it's analyzing is sometimes on their clients' local servers, but oftentimes it is on Palantir cloud networks. And while Palantir assures that their clients, quote, maintain ownership of the data now and at every point in the future, end quote, this has been revealed not to be entirely true, according to a dispute with the New York Police Department. Palantir declined to hand over a readable version of NYPD data back to the department after they terminated their contract. Palantir claiming it, quote, retains all rights, end quote, to any documentation from the products that they licensed to the department. The company claimed that returning any, quote, technical data, end quote, would threaten its, quote, intellectual property, end quote, while also explicitly prohibiting the department from transferring, transmitting, and exporting this data through the duration of their contract as well. While the specifics of their contract are still unknown, the NYPD was licensing Palantir software to produce analyses from data collected by the police, such as arrest records, license plate reads, and parking tickets. This revelation as to the ownership of data once Palantir analyzes it has only come to light after years of public record requests, a lawsuit, and the New York City Council denying they ever worked with Palantir. While the original data may have been returned, the analyses of this data was not, according to the dispute. This is a huge revelation yet to be discussed in a public setting, and not just because the astounding market share that Palantir has within the United States across multiple sectors, but rather these intellectual property agreements between the government and private companies have frightening implications for how the government is handling sensitive data on US citizens once it is analyzed. And regardless if this sensitive data is anonymized, re-identification has been shown possible with data matching and pattern identification using these same AI machine learning techniques. Analyzed data is a refined version of itself, arguably having more data points than when it was in its original form. And this can be seen as a derivative product, a product created by making changes to an existing product. It has been likened to when data is simply copied, but rather the copy now contains predictive insights. This transmutation of analyzed data into a company's intellectual property does not seem to be an isolated practice within military and government contractors in the field of data analytics. It is also currently the case with the biggest data scandal in history. This similar data scandal and still ongoing litigation involves another private military contractor known as SCL Group, also known as Cambridge Analytica as per the UK Parliament. SCL Group was told to return data to Facebook which it illegally procured from the social media giant. This military contractor gave the original data back, but it had already analyzed this Facebook data to build AI predictive models that it used in military influence operations to engineer attitudes and behaviors. During a UK House of Commons hearing on the scandal, Chairman Damian Collins asked a top executive from the company named Christopher Wiley as to whether the company could have rightfully said that they returned the data whilst still keeping the analyzed information. Christopher Wiley compares this derivative data to a book being translated from French to English. Quote, "It's the same information being conveyed, it just looks very different. Or it could even look completely different if you translated it into, Chinese, for example. It looks completely different and has a different semantic structure, grammatical structure, tenses, etc., but the same information is conveyed because while the actual data itself may look different, the underlying information is what matters, end quote. This begs the question, if all analyzed US government data becomes part and parcel of Palantir's intellectual property, how and where has it been used outside of these contracts, and for what purposes? Even more concerning is that Palantir, like most private military contractors in this field of data analytics, do not exclusively lend themselves to US government institutions, but foreign forces as well. So if the analyzed aggregate data from the US federal government, Department of Defense, intelligence community, state and local governments, critical infrastructure, along with the banking, financial, and medical sectors, are considered the intellectual property of private companies, what does that mean for national security? And this next section is titled, How Can Analyzed Data Be Weaponized? Who cares? What's the worst that can be done with my license plate information, medical records, buying habits, and social media data? When waged online, cognitive warfare and cognitive counter-operations start with data. When data is matched with personally identifiable information, or PII, the AI predictive models of companies like Palantir and SCL Group can determine your private traits and attributes such as personality and behavioral vulnerabilities. Using this psychological and psychographic profile, an influence campaign can be created and adjusted in real time by AI machine learning models until the desired cognitive and behavior effects on the individual and or population are achieved. Palantir Foundry and Palantir Gotham are designed for large-scale data integration, analysis, and insight generation, which can be used to inform a wide range of activities, including operations, intelligence work, financial analysis, crisis management, etc. So while Palantir does not conduct these influence campaigns, their AI and machine learning models with built-in feedback loops can augment and complement other analyses of connected systems that do. These influence campaigns conducted during cognitive warfare and cognitive counter-operations are executed through the private influence industry known as strategic communications, or STRATCOM. Strategic communications is utilized in multiple sectors as a method of advertising, perception management, public relations, crisis management, etc. So while cognitive warfare refers to these activities when used in military settings, cognitive operations are not exclusive to the military ward. There are multiple methods used to achieve the desired effects and cognitive brain function through strategic communications. Two of the most notable being micro-targeting and attitudinal inoculation. The effects of cognitive warfare and cognitive operations online are achieved through attitudinal inoculation by using information for a conflicting purpose. And this can be done using autonomous or semi-autonomous systems like bots, human operators, etc. Effects of attitudinal inoculation are achieved by engaging with an audience and using weak counter-arguments in support of a narrative, whereby the receiver seeks out identity-supporting information that further strengthens their threatened position, thus building psychological preservance mechanisms such as confirmation bias. The held opinion, attitude, interpretation of events, etc., then becomes resistant to a stronger attack, hence the medical terminology referring to a vaccine. This methodology significantly increases the resilience of audiences and enables them to withstand any attempts from others to change their opinions, decisions, interpretations of events, etc. Micro-targeting is a suggestive recommender algorithm, or SERA. It's similar to native algorithms on websites that promote related content and suggested media based on not only what you like, but also what people like who are similar to you. In the case of micro-targeting, rather than a user being provided content based on what a website's algorithms predict that they will like, they're instead micro-targeted messages from the website's sponsors. Websites essentially give this capability to the highest bidder as an advertising technique. But not all sponsored material are labeled as such, and not all strategic communications campaigns are designed to look like advertisements, primarily in political and military stratcoms. When an audience is only micro-targeted information that they're most likely to resonate with, they're algorithmically segmented into what's known as online echo chambers, which don't allow the group to see a conflicting counterbalance of content. Over time, this trains the audience's suggestive recommender algorithms, which then begin to naturally display only a limited view of reality. Algorithmically segmenting audience into echo chambers has defensive and offensive military applications. In military counter operations such as counterinsurgency or COIN, the doctrine calls to separate and isolate populations from one another, both physically and psychologically. Not only does this prevent the threat network from recruiting neutral and friendly populations, but it assists in the development of psychological preservance mechanisms like confirmation bias. Quote, significantly, the methodology increases the resilience of susceptible audiences and enables them to withstand foreign propaganda effects, end quote. And I actually want to step away from the article really fast. That quote is from a NATO article about behavioral change science, where SCL Group was actually running this program and training NATO and NATO allies on their behavioral dynamics methodology. It was known as the Train the Trainer program. And I actually didn't put that in there, but that you can find that source in that article inside of those sources. Anyway, getting back to the article. In doing so, this helps counterinsurgents and third-party counterinsurgents leverage the population and operational environment against the threat network. But there are sociological and psychological side effects to these algorithms occurring in native suggestive recommender systems and micro-targeting alike. Decades of peer-reviewed research show that echo chambers in the physical world and online cause asymmetric and political polarization, extremism, confusion, dissonance, negative emotional responses such as fear, anger, etc., reactance, microaggressions, and third-person effects. And because of these psychological preservance mechanisms like confirmation bias, this can be very problematic based on the work of Nian and Reifler. Nian and Reifler found that even attempting to correct false beliefs often reinforces rather than dispels these beliefs amongst those who hold them most strongly. This is known as the backfire effect, quote, in which corrections actually increase misperceptions, end quote, whereby through confirmation bias, these mechanisms utilized in military counter-operations actually lead to the backfire effect and exacerbate the very issues they are attempting to counter: extremism, dissonance, polarization, etc. This is not only problematic in and of itself, but more so following the UK Parliament determination that the same aforementioned military contractor who conducts this work online, SCL Group / Cambridge Analytica, bypassed US election laws and used these predictive models to micro-target conspiratorial-minded individuals having mental health vulnerabilities with fear-based disinformation. Doing so with software deemed weapons-grade communications tactics. In multiple interviews from 2019, one of which being with NPR, the company's research director, Christopher Wiley, states that this demographic was chosen because these individuals were who could be used to, quote, spark an insurgency within the United States, end quote. And this wasn't some fly-by-night company. SCL Group, which both countered violent extremism and caused it, was applauded by a U.S. State Department CVE contract immediately after its election shenanigans. Quote, in sum, After 6 years of research and countless demonstrations by companies wishing to sell their services, the GEC is not aware of any companies that approach the sophistication and effectiveness of SCL in designing data-driven influence campaigns that demonstrably work, end quote. This intersection of politics and military to create a self-sustaining U.S. domestic war economy is just one of many reasons that the U.S. government needs to reimagine how it handles the analyzed data of U.S. citizens, especially if it ever hopes to rein in this unregulated influence industry, the political military complex.